Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz Lebanese-Canadian drummer Sanah Kadoura. She got her diploma and bachelor's degree and even a master's in jazz performance and would go on to perform and tour with masters of the music world and up-and-comers. She's performed with the likes of the legendary Ed Cherry, Mark Whitfield, Joe Locke, Tivon Pennicott, Roy Hargrove, Sullivan Fortner, and so many others. She talked about her latest 2018 CD called Hawkeyes. It's a great story and so much more. She's got great tales of redemption and so much more to talk about, so get to know her and dig this interview, my friends.
Thanks again for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem.
So let me ask you about Hawkeyes. I've been really enjoying this album. I enjoy your vibe, your overall jazz feeling. Talk to me about this project and what went into it.
I was supposed to record it, my debut album, which wasn't going to be, it was going to be entitled Hawkeyes, but it wasn't, the compositions weren't exactly the same. And I hit my head 2 days before that was supposed to happen. Through the process of a pretty crazy brain injury, I kind of went back and tweaked and sometimes completely changed some of the songs, and the title Hawkeyes started to become something different. I guess I've put the last up to 8 years in there, but a real big emphasis on the last 2 with this whole process, this whole journey.
So why the name Hawkeyes, especially in light of the accident and everything? Kind of talk to me about how that happened.
There was a time where I couldn't really breathe, which was for a long time. So because my nervous system was so messed up that I would have to meditate to where I could almost leave my body and just watch from above so I could just get through the anxiety attacks that were coming every day. Because of, it was kind of crazy.
In a lot of ways, has music saved you?
Oh, yeah. Many times. It's saved me many, many times on multiple occasions. That's for sure.
Are you from Canada?
Yep, I was born and raised in Canada.
Okay, cool.
I'm Lebanese.
Exactly. So talk to me a little bit about your background and how you got involved with music.
The Lebanese culture is very joyful, so there's a lot of music, and the weddings are crazy. You know, when I was growing up, weddings would go until the next day, people just dancing and celebrating, and there would be a lot of drums at the wedding. There would be special drums. Not like everyone would be dancing to a drum set, but it would be certain drums that would hit certain notes at certain times. If you listen to certain types of Arabian music, there's a lot of low end. And so there were always drums around, and, you know, every Arabic household had something called a darbeki. They were always just around, and everyone wanted to play it, so it's kind of like this beautiful thing that I never really got to touch as a kid, you know.
How did jazz slip into the fold, and what jazz albums did you listen to early on that really got you into it?
My first jazz album was obviously Kind of Blue.
Yep, mine too.
I found it randomly one day, and I just put it in, and it was like, oh, I don't even really know what this is. Miles Davis, I've heard the name before. I didn't really know what it was. And then from there, kind of went to a big Ray Haynes fan, big Tony fan, big Alvin fan. So if I could find anything with them on it, I would be just in it. And then I started to get more heavily into modern jazz. So I think the intro to that for me was Joshua Redman, which I think is for a lot of people. If you don't come from New York and, you know, have it all kind of just being in this hub.
What did you learn in college that really helped you as a musician? Or what mentors did you have that gave you good advice?
Oh, man. I'm going to be honest and say I think the most important thing that I learned in school was that I didn't need to be learning this music in school. I didn't need to be there. I needed to be playing and learning through the people who have done this, you know, that have lived this life and lived the struggle and now pass on, you know. So I didn't really have a good time in school. I'm not a very You know, I like to learn at my own pace, and sometimes sometimes it's faster than the rest of the class, and sometimes it's slower than the rest of the class. So I'm a firm believer in, you know, you find what you need when you need to learn that certain thing in your life. So the whole school system doesn't really make sense to me.
Yeah, no, I understand, you know, and that's kind of the whole school of Phil Woods thought, was that the stage is the classroom, and that's where you learn. And you have obviously shared the stage with some legendary kinds of people, and some big shots like Ed Cherry and Mark Whitfield, Joe Locke, Tivon Pennicott, who Tivon has actually been in Kansas City the last several years doing our Charlie Parker festivities.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the late, great Roy Hargrove, Sullivan Fortner. Talk to me about, maybe just because it's timely and topical and it's on people's minds, talk to me a little bit about Roy, and then talk to me a little bit about what you've learned from the veterans.
Roy was always supportive. He was always he was always there, you know, whether there was something going on the stage that wasn't, if it was. He was there to learn from. So all the young guys, myself included when I moved here, he was a huge part in the New York jazz scene. You know, he was the type of guy that would go out and play however many sets and then find the music after, you know. Find a jam session where he could play more and he could teach more and he could give people music, you know. And there are many times where I'd be playing, and honestly, Roy would just come out of nowhere and he'd play the rest of the gig. He was just that beautiful. It would be just a surprise, and now that was school. I learned so much about sensitivity on the drums and life on the drums, and yeah, that was definitely school.
What about the other veterans? What did they teach you about being a musician?
Well, it's almost like each one kind of teaches you a little snippet. But the other veterans that I've had the pleasure of playing, Kirk Lighstey, who played with Chet Baker and just a handful of Sonny Stitt, you know, he was a legend. I think I learned the biggest thing from him, because it had nothing to do with music. So that meant it would seep into me and have everything to do with music. He would come to New York. He lives in Paris, France, and we'd have a bunch of gigs at, you know, around the village. And the first year that he came, I think the drummer got sick, and Ed Cherry was playing with him, and he was like, "Hey, come down to the rehearsal." I was like, "Okay, weird." I knew his name, but I didn't really know him. So I go down to rehearsal, and there's no drummer there. And Kirk, not knowing me, looks at me and said, "Hey, you play the drums, right? What are you doing? Get on the drums." I was like, in my mind, I'm flipping out. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. I get on the drums, and he looks at me and says, "You want the gig?" I was like, yeah. Since then, I got to spend chunks of time with Kirk, and the most important thing he taught me was to stand up straight.
Yeah.
I know it sounds funny, but he really taught me, like, stand up straight, you know. He nicknamed me Miss Magic, and he was like, just stand up straight. And I was like, man. You know, sometimes it can be hard when you're kind of in the vortex of New York, you know. It can get you places. It's just a nice reminder.
So are you happy with where you're at right now? Things are moving in the right direction. You've been around for some time. You got a new album. Are you happy?
I've never been happier, my friend. It's been such a journey, for one. It's been a hell of a trip. But it's, you know, I wouldn't change any of my experiences for anything, you know.
So what's the future look like? What do you want to see happen, say, 5-10 years from now?
We'll be pretty busy. You know, my plan is to continue spreading light, you know, sharing music and just good energy and healing positivity for people that need it, you know, through this music, because it can really, you know, it's saved me many times, and I know it can save others. So that's my plan. In 5 to 10 years, I'll still be Red and the Light, still writing music, still recording it, still touring the world, just connecting with humans, you know.
Speaking of the classroom, the real classroom is also being able to see live jazz. And what live jazz shows have you witnessed? Just a show or two that really sticks out to you, that really blew you away?
Oh, that's hard. It's been a long time of seeing music every day.
Yeah, sure.
At some point, it's almost like each one kind of just gives you a little more light and understanding on which way you want to go with it. Oh, if I had to think of one. Okay, I got one. It was the first day I moved to New York. Obviously, this would be special to me. But at this point, I was obsessed with Roy Haynes. This was quite a bit ago. I was doing my master's, and I had done my thesis on Roy Haynes. And the day I moved to New York was the last day he was playing at Dizzy's. I was coming from Canada. I didn't really know how things worked, you know what I mean? It's really a different world. At that point in time, it was really a different world. I get there, and I'm like almost kind of flipping out, like fangirling over but this is sold out, and I'm like heartbroken. I'm sitting against the door listening to the first set, just like so sad, you know. And then in the second set, and I still waited there, they let everyone in. At the end of the line, there was 2 seats left, and my mother was with me. And she brings us in, and I'm like shaking. The last 2 seats in the whole club were the 2 seats right in front of the drums. I stared at Roy Haynes for over an hour, just like in awe that night. And then I just cried. I cried. It was so amazing to me just to actually see that this whole legacy of, you know, what I was building a life around was real, you know.
Yeah.
It was such a huge part for me, a huge part of my dreams, you know. So it was really special to see in real life, and, you know, now it's a little more put in me, but that first time was crazy.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. Why do you love jazz?
It's so, honestly, I think this is my view on it. I think before talking to someone, before meeting someone, before almost being in that same energetic space as another human, if you hear them play, you can almost hear what their core values are. You can hear what type of person they are. You can hear their fears. You can hear what they love. And it's something like that spoke to me in such a creative way that it was beautiful, but it was to a point where, yes, it was creative, but it was also naked. You can't hide who you are. This music forces you. It forces you to show. It forces you to be vulnerable, you know. And I think there's true beauty in that.
I agree. So this is my final question. Everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but you know who you are. Tell me who you think you are.
Oh, man. I have been on a spiritual journey the last little while. Through that process, I've learned that I know nothing. So energy is, you know, in constant flux. So the particles in us are changing every second. So we are always changing. So I'm just trying to keep up with who I am and who I'm trying to mold myself into, you know. I know I love hard no matter what it is, you know. That's my biggest strength is my heart, and I put it into everything that I do. I think that's the beautiful thing about who we are as humans is we can kind of fluctuate, you know. It's not like if there's a stern person, it's not like that person doesn't have this soft side, you know. There are certain things that are going to bring it out in him. But your core values, you know, I do believe in treating people the way that you want to be treated. I do believe in karma, so
Yeah,
I believe
absolutely.
karma is brought forth in not just actions, it's also in thoughts and intentions, and those create energy. And energy can't be created, or whatever. Energy is here, but we can't destroy it. So something has to balance that out, whether it's a thought or I'm a big believer in that.
I like that answer. That's great. I think that's a great way to wrap everything up. Hey, thank you for taking a minute out. Thank you for your music and stories. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Lebanon, New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Sanah for her time, her music, and her stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com for everything Neon Jazz. Go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the music, my friends.
Neon Jazz.